Hello and welcome to the Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. I'm Matthew, and I'm joined across the continent by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how you doing this week?
I am doing great. I'm excited, I'm hyped, and I'm ready to talk some canon.
There we go. I've been looking forward to today. It's a good sign. Really looking forward to just sitting, chatting, talking about Star Wars on YouTube here and on Twitch and on Twitter. We got a good show this week. Talking a bit more about tone and genre off the top, and then getting some Acolyte, Jedi Survivor news, and before diving into those space wizards, the what makes an ideal Jedi or not, we'll see. You got to get the plugs in there first. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IonCanonPod, EYEONCANONPOD, as you can see at the bottom there, over there. And thanks to everyone who's following along over on Twitter and on Twitch. Tractor Beam, I gotta plug the Tractor Beam. You can get all of our full episodes. I will upload the full episode tonight to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I've forgotten the last few weeks. That's not good. So I'll get to that tonight. Yeah, I know, but once is a mistake, twice is a pattern. So gonna get to it tonight. Anyway, Tractor Beam, that's also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Usually get to that Friday afternoon, Friday night. As my weekly comic book reviews, and this week I got to Darth Vader number 29 and was glad to see High Republic Adventures number 1 get kicked off of phase 2 of High Republic Adventures number 1 with a pretty fun story. I always get excited diving into a new High Republic story specifically. So go check those out on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Just looking for Ion Canon. And other ways to get a hold of us, to get in contact with us. Got our YouTube memberships here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. Got super chats on this YouTube channel as well. Both of those support the channel, support the flagship podcast, support us as well. And if you do super chat, you are guaranteed to get our attention. We tend to respond to comments generally, but definitely if you do super chat, our Discord, Star Wars Underworld Discord, we're definitely both in there chatting away, talking about things. So if you want a link, a fresh toasty link, let us know. Send us a DM on Twitter or Instagram, and we will hook you up. Okay, that does it for plugs. Joel, you were on Doc Holocron's channel, I guess was it last week or whenever it was, and again talking about tone and genre and Andor and all that. So can you give us a 3-minute summary of kind of what you talked about and what you have to maybe add in this week?
Yeah. So me and Doc were just kind of going off the idea of the whole discourse that everything should be like Andor, and obviously nuance why we said no. But we kind of came to kind of 2 conclusions, and conclusion A is we would like to see more mature, kind of more in-depth storytelling in Star Wars. I think we can all agree on that. And my kind of light bulb moment talking was sort of like, I think the best Star Wars is honestly the one that that's mostly just focuses on the genre and less on the Star Wars. So like Andor, it's a political spy thriller in Star Wars. Mandalorian, spaghetti western in Star Wars. And I think that's why those 2 are kind of the more higher tiered, so to speak, of the 2 shows so far. You can say that about like any franchise, like with Marvel, Winter Soldier. It's a spy thriller that just happens to have Captain America. So yeah, that was sort of our just basic conclusion. We had a lot of fun. Go check us out on Doc Holocron's channel. And Doc, if you're listening, hi.
There you go. Speaking of people listening, Chosen Nightwolf, what is up? Thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's definitely a great point, a great question. It leads me to ask, what genres do I think they need to lean into still and lean into more? And that's why I was like, I'm glad you guys came to the conclusion. Well, not necessarily all of these the same like Andor. I'm concerned that if we get too many of these spy thrillers, it'll water down what made Andor so special and unique. And be like, I'm concerned the Bob Iger hiring. I know there's different layers to it. I hope he doesn't go, oh, that was successful. Do more of that without really considering the artistic merit of other genres and other styles and the artistic merit of having diverse genres, diverse tones. That being said, I really want them to continue to lean into the George Lucas roots of space fantasy adventure and the wider view historical political intrigue. So more Last Jedi, more Rogue One. Yeah, Andor had its political intrigue, of course. My favorite stuff, I think, in retrospect, is everything to do with Mon Mothma, and yeah, I mean, I'm a West Wing fan. I'm a House of Cards fan. Give me West Wing of Cards in space. This kind of hopeful realism and this is what Star Wars can really do well, and I think this is what the prequel trilogy especially did well, was present a hopeful realism that avoids and combines the extremes of optimism and cynicism. So the political intrigue stories, I mean, everything with Darth Plagueis, that novel, the Legends novel, and yeah, Ahsoka and the Acolyte do look to continue the space fantasy adventure aspect. So we'll get into Acolyte in a second.
Filoni has said that he's gonna make Ahsoka a samurai genre, so he's been talking about that. So
yeah,
Kurosawa and all that good stuff. So I'm curious if he can pull it off.
which, speaking of the space fantasy roots, I mean, there's a very much a samurai infused element into that. I mean, Visions really brought that out, did a great job bringing that out. So yeah, I don't know, Jolie, if you have any further thoughts on this question.
Give me a Star Wars rom-com. A Jedi
Yeah.
and a Sith, they can't fall in love. Join the adventures of these two as they navigate the Star Wars universe and find happiness. No, seriously, like try those weirder things. Give me a
Yeah.
Star Wars rom-com, man.
I know Zerata Cordova. I started Convergence, and I mentioned a few weeks ago, I think, that Crash of Fate. I guess that's not really a rom-com, it's more of a rom drama. I heard it didn't quite work as well. Yeah, well, here's an interesting thing. So in phase 1 era of the High Republic, there's this genre of Jedi romance where it's two Jedi who are two knights, really, who are already starting to who get the feels, catch the feels, but because they're Jedi, they can't go for it. They're knights, they can't go for it. It's interesting that you have Avar and Elzar in there, kind of being this meta that this is a Jedi rom-com a little bit. So it's not so much a com, it's more of a tragedy. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm gonna think about what kind of characters would be good for a Star Wars rom-com. I mean, Han and Leia could be a good rom-com.
Yeah.
You kind of are already. Pretty
much, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So fair enough. Any last thoughts on that before we get into some darker news? I mean, happy news.
No, I think maybe since we're getting some darker news, I just hope the Acolyte really leans into, like, I know we're all excited, High Republic, Jedi says, I mean, it's gonna be that, but at the end of the day, they keep saying thriller, mystery, crime drama. So I'm thinking like the two detectives in like looking through clues and the murderer, and it's like everything that kind of like a murder, like Law and Order SVU kind of cop dramedy brings to it.
My first title blank of the night, the Daniel Jose Older's High Republic comic, phase 1 era comic, of a Jedi investigator and a civilian investigator in Coruscant investigating the Nameless and the mystery of the Nameless, and that comment. Yeah. Wow. Sorry, everybody. I gotta look that up. Keep talking while you look that up there, Joel.
I wish I remember. But no, it's like, it's like it's like you got the chief police, man. It's like, it's like that one episode of Clone Wars with the Tom Kenny detective dude. It's like, you get really lean into like those sort of genres of like, this is a mystery science, this is a mystery thriller. Just so happens that the murderer is also part of a 1,000-year-old cult of dark wizards. It's a mystery thriller with a Star Wars coat of paint, and that to me is why Andor and Mando are the kind of honestly the best at this, because they're the genre first and they are the coat of paint second. And don't get me wrong, I love Kenobi and I love Boba Fett, but I sometimes feel like those two get a little bit too much of like, this is Star Wars doing the Star Wars things. Kenobi does it really well. It's like, I'm not quite sure what the genre of Kenobi is. I mean, fantasy, I guess, in general.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's sequel to Revenge of the Sith. It kind of is.
yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's sort of just the overall point. Of like the best, I think, are always
mhm.
the genre or the mix of genres. Nothing's ever one genre.
Yeah.
And then
Sorry.
with the Star Wars could have paint. But yeah, well, what did you find the
Trail
protagonist?
of Shadows. That's what
Trail
it's
of
called.
Shadows.
It's
There we go.
really great. It links up with Daniel Jose Older's High Republic Adventures comic to some extent. Obviously, it's phase one. It's all interconnected with everything ultimately going on with Starlight Beacon. But that was a great genre story. Here's the thing I want to probe and push a little bit before we move on. The thing the reason I want space fantasy is, well, see, like I mentioned with Andor and Last Jedi, it mentions it names the divide between um real world grounded story and the fun lore around it, like Luthen's shop I was talking about. I also that's special and that's incredible. I want uh things that are explicitly combining and integrating the two. But of course, that being said, there's no such thing like this whole conceptual thing of separating character uh from genre. Genre is the environment that the character goes through and the adventure and the type of story this is. So yeah, I mean, I get your point about Star Wars, geeky Star Wars stuff being the paint. I like pretty paint, among other things. Anyways, speaking of the Acolyte, and the thriller, it is going to be a bit of a thriller, intense story. They're kind of creepy, probably almost touching on horror. I don't know, a little bit, but
Maybe.
anyways, we're gonna dive into this. There's a cast member Daphne Keane. She was on Tech Radar, or she gave an interview to Tech Radars. It's a site that runs stories of different kinds, and um, yeah, she was interviewed. She was teasing another film. Again, train of thought. Let's see what film she was. Here's Dark Materials. That's what it is. She was promoting that anyway. But in the midst of that, she's asked about the Acolyte, of course, and she had a key quote here. I can tease that it's a prequel. As you know, it's set 100 years before the prequel movies. It's kind of an explanation of how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi. It's a Sith-led story which has never been done before. Oh man.
Very exciting.
Oh man.
Oh
Joel, I'll
man.
turn this to you. This is a show you're really looking forward to. What do you think? What are you feeling?
Yeah, just excitement, man. I don't know what to feel, honestly. It's just like just infiltrating the Jedi. Ooh, that's gonna sound cool. It's like how that gonna happen? What's going on? What do they do? And everyone's kind of talking about like here's our chance to really have some deep Sith lore, kind of like what are the Sith outside of just Palpatine. And I'm kind of curious if this show does for kind of the Rebel Alliance what what the show did the Sith what Andor did for the Rebel Alliance in terms of like changing our perspective of how we know them, even if it doesn't change like the core of what they are. Just like doing a deeper dive into it and and it's sort of like, okay, like we know what the Sith are like just based on Palpatine and Vader, probably generally same idea, but like let's go deeper into it. Like what are people outside of Palpatine and Vader like? And if this is a Sith-led story, it's going to be interesting to see kind of Siths who aren't cartoons. Maybe that's a little harsh, but it's like someone who's like a person, but who's also doing the Sith thing. And it's kind of like, okay, well, what does a more nuanced thinking person who's maybe not a complete psycho become a Sith? Or maybe they are complete psychos, they're better at hiding it. I don't know. But yeah, I'm curious about that. And interesting how she worded it, saying infiltrated the Jedi. I mean, they infiltrated the Republic, sure, but I don't remember them infiltrating the Jedi unless it was Yaddle was secretly the Sith Lord. Oh, just kidding. There was a Sith on the council. It was Jarl Poof. I knew it.
There, explain it.
But No, I
Yeah.
just find that wording very interesting. Unless the actors is just like confusing Jedi and Republic together, which that happens. Not really their job
Mhm.
to know the deep lore. That's the writers. That's the writers and story group combined. But yeah, just very interesting wording. Obviously, could take place in the High Republic, the era, even if it's not connected directly to the initiative.
Mhm.
Um, so very excited. Can't wait for the series. Probably the year after next, so 2025. If I'm gonna make a bet on when it comes.
2025 or 2024?
Oh wait, 2024,
Yeah.
2022. That's right, 2024. Sorry.
I mean, we're almost 2023. That's all. Man,
I
I
know.
don't want it to come that long. I can't. I want this show to come sooner than that. Yeah. It's interesting. Your mind goes to the past, the ancient past. My mind does a little bit with Bane, and if it explores some of that and the Bane plan, my mind goes to the future and what uh, if we're going to make the parallel with Andor. This is uh, what Andor might will be to say Rebels, but also to A New Hope and Rogue One and A New Hope. This show could be to the Phantom Menace. This show could be. This is what
Oh
the
yeah.
Bane plan looks like at this point. Uh, this is what whoever the Sith Master is saying. Okay, now's the time to actually really put the final stage of the plan in motion, so that by the time of the late Republic, the Jedi are really so corrupted and so focused on the needs of the Republic, they jump headlong and then and so tied their luck and their fortunes, not luck, but their interpretation of the will of the Force to just whatever is good for the Republic. Um, that they just end up fighting in a Clone War and leading in Clone War. These guardians of peace and justice who can't fight a war for you end up fighting a war for you. Um, so
Right.
yeah, and so you talk about the word infiltrate, and you know, uh, just thinking about that, I don't know if it's infiltrate, say in the same way, bring up the Marvel thing, Hydra infiltrating Shield. I don't know if it's that kind of thing. That'll be kind of neat, but it may be kind of boring and kind of old, kind of told. It's been told already, right? We've seen the story of Hydra infiltrating Shield, right? I want to see how the Siths, the Shroud of the Dark Side, Attack of the Clones, the Shroud of the Dark Side falls. The Yoda and Mace Windu have trouble discerning what the will of the Force is. They have trouble seeing the light because their own ambitions, their own sense of what is right and wrong have been so clouded by their sense of what the Republic needs, what these politicians need, what the senators need. Maybe I'm getting. I mean, this is my West Wing of Cards show. I don't know, but um, yeah, maybe if anything closer to House of Cards, right? But uh, yeah, I mean, I'm yeah, like you, I'm super hyped for that. Yeah, in a way, might also do for a Phantom Menace what Kenobi did for Revenge of the Sith, right? Really take seriously that story as a main story and not simply as a backstory. Or, here I go again with J.J. Abrams as just this one little note when the real story was about Luke, Han, and Leia. Um, this is going to take that large scale view of history. I mean, this how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi. That's a large scale
Legacy novels.
story.
That
So, yeah,
originally.
it's a large scale story. Of course, it's also going to be very character driven, right? It has to be. We have to have a character to latch on to. In the main character of this show, probably going to be that acolyte, that agent, that whoever that starts to influence the Jedi. So I'm excited. I'm starting to look forward to the show even more and more now. Probably even more than Ahsoka, definitely more than Mandalorian season 3. Mandalorian season 3 is going to be great. We got an air date for it coming in March. That's fine. Bring on my evil ancient space wizards.
Well, these shows take a few years to make because
That's true.
you want the quality, you gotta wait.
Yeah,
They're the reason why Tony Gilroy didn't want to do 5 seasons. He
that's
wanted to
true.
live, dang it. He wanted to
That
live.
is true. No, that's true. Oh yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I'm definitely all about taking the time to get it right. That is the lesson of Solo, as I've probably said on this, probably said multiple times. Bob Iger, I know you're listening to the Iron Canon podcast here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. the lesson of Solo was not. I don't know, whatever you think the lesson of Solo was. Lesson of Solo
Don't
is
fire the
not
two
that,
interesting parts of your movie, which
the
are Lord
lesson
and
of
Miller.
Solo is take the time to get it right. Don't worry about 2 films a year. you know. So that's thought about the Acolyte. Do you have any last thoughts about the Acolyte?
It's interesting though that she says it's a Sith-led film when the summary's like a Jedi and their ex Padawan. Unless the ex Padawan went to the dark side and it's gonna be like a plot reveal kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of curious about that,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I'm curious about if it's a Sith-led story. Hey, I hope they don't chicken out and have her just redeem herself because that's no fun. Commit, dang it, commit to the
Yeah.
darkness. But also commit to the darkness. How do you make I mean, it's not impossible to make a Sith sympathetic, but it's like you gotta
Mm-hmm.
remember the Sith are still bad guys. They're still
Yeah.
evil. And it's like you're not, you can't do the Palpatine thing. They're not Palpatine. They're not. You gotta really latch on to the character. So I'm very curious to see.
Mm-hmm.
Andor was a very maverick of a main protagonist for Star Wars in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like he's not Rey, he's not Han, he's not Leia. He's definitely not the most heroic person. But I mean, he got there. He got very heroic by the end. He
Yeah.
saved Bix in the gang, so he's not a bad person. Far
Mm-hmm.
from it, but he's not your traditional. Da-da-da. So
The
how do
soundtrack. There we
you
go.
yeah. How do
Yeah.
you make a cis-led character
Mm-hmm.
someone the audience can follow in both a tragic sense but also a sympathetic sense, especially when you're not showing their fall. It's like if they're a
Mm-hmm.
Sith already, they've already done the falling. Now
True.
it's just the dark siding. Words day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's
So
right.
I'm just kind of curious. I'm just kind of curious, like, okay, how is this all going to play out? And that's what makes it exciting.
So 2 parallels come to mind in this. One is Marky and Rowe, that guy. Where is it? This guy here. Um, Marky and Rowe, who, yeah, I mean, especially Charles Soule has done a great job of delving into what makes this guy tick. What does he care about? Um, does he really care? He cares about himself, but just you have a sense of this character is a lot to sink your teeth into him, right? He has such juicy lines and a juicy command of the Nihil and whatnot. And then another parallel is Reva, and what they got to do, similar to Markian, they got to do what they did with Reva and what they didn't do with Reva. Like you're saying, we hope this Sith character doesn't get redeemed. That would be, again, it's not that that's necessarily a bad story. It's just we've seen that story. We saw it. We've seen it since 1983, right? We saw it in the Return of the Jedi. We saw it in the Rise of Skywalker. We saw it in Kenobi. So let's yeah, like you said, really commit. Um, kind of again, there's the House of Cards parallel too of Kevin Spacey's character. I mean, real world things not conspired, real world things led to him being taken off screen, but he never redeemed in that show. Spoiler alert. Yeah, I kind of hope, but it's still interesting. And the point I think you're getting at, Joel, is that a redemption story isn't the only way to make an evil character interesting. There are other ways. Again, Marky and Rose doing Charles Soule's doing it with Marky and Rose. I hope Charles Soule's involved in this show somehow. But also, I trust Leslie Hilden to really know what to do and how to do it too. So that's exciting. Before we move on, again, last chance on talking about the Acolyte until there's more Acolyte news.
No, I mean it's gonna be sad. I feel like it's not gonna be Acolyte news for quite a while.
That's true.
Just excited. I've heard good things about Russian Doll.
Yeah.
So excited to see where this show ends up. We got a year to
Yes.
wait.
Yeah.
So
There we go.
it's funny how this and Andor are gonna come out in the same year, more or less. I think so.
Yeah.
Kind of the double whammy of sort of the different side of Star Wars, the Pinewood side, so to
Yes.
speak. So
something tells me I'm gonna like. I loved Andor. Something tells me I'm gonna love the Acolyte. Yeah, like it's again, it is in High Republic. It's telling the Jedi story and the Sith story. But yeah, my jam. and Joel, ancient Sith, weird lore, your jam. So there.
I know.
In real life, you're actually a very kind person. I'm gonna put this out there.
Uh,
no, you like the Sith, but you're
I
actually
know.
there. We go.
Paradox of me.
Yes. Anyway, speaking of space wizards, we got some Jedi Survivor news, and by Jedi I also mean battle scars. The first bit of news there is we got a cover reveal for the novel Jedi Battle Scars, written by Toronto's own Sam Maggs. She's from here. Anyway,
Yay.
yeah, we got this great cover. Yeah, we got Marin and oh goodness, again, goodness me, names, Matthew, names. I should just write these down now. Come on, and they got the Inquisitor from Kenobi. There we go, and from Rebels. Yeah, it's interesting. Like color blue at the bottom, red at the top. I guess canonically his saber is blue, even if well, I guess you have the crew of the ship, and then yeah, I guess the big bad's going to be that Inquisitor now. That's pretty cool. Or at least the big bad in the novel. See what happens. Yeah, what did you think about this cover? Excited about this book?
Oh yeah, it's nice to see a video game tie-in book. Haven't
Mhm.
gotten one since the Battlefront game.
True.
I'm excited because honestly, weird take, kind of weird take. I'm excited because of the second brother.
Yeah.
I am kind of curious to see what he can do in a book and if he's gonna be like a prominent part or not. And I love
Mhm.
seeing the expanded material kind of flesh out just the Inquisitors in different stories. Like,
Mhm.
okay, in Rebels he was kind of a doofus, and then Kenobi was kind of just sitting there while Reva did her thing. Now it's like maybe this is his time to shine. Now this is his
Mhm.
story. We get to learn his goals and much stuff. So very interesting. Good to see the crew back.
Mhm.
Sam Meggs. I've never read anything of hers, but I've heard she's great. So I'm excited for her.
Mhm.
And speaking of scars, you can see Cal Kestis got a little scar on his nose. So
Oh
there's
yeah,
the scar.
there we go. Yeah, is that the battle scar? There you go. There you go. Yeah, yeah, second brother. I mean, yeah, really cool character. It also maybe hints a little bit at some connection to Kenobi. I mean, this is set probably not that far out, right? Maybe I don't. We don't. Do we know? I don't know if we know how many.
It's
What the time?
5.
Well, I know Fallen Order is 5. Do we know if there's a time jump here? Um,
I think so. I mean, maybe it's a little bit after Kenobi. I haven't read the summary. I should have read
that'd
this.
be interesting if they time jump even further, like 5 years. That'd be cool too. I mean, kind of around the Han Solo Chewbacca book that sets sort of after, or a comic book that sets sort of after Solo. Yeah, or there, but not in a whole different corner of the galaxy. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to probing just what the inner narrative core of what a video game that it carrying on what was so great about the video game about Jedi Fallen Order. I mean, that's the challenge for this and for Survivor is taking that and just building on it. Like, how do you build on the peak of video game storytelling? It's going to be a challenge, but I mean, Sam Maggs was also again. I talk about adult novels taking the time to to fill in the detail, to get into the inner monologue of the characters. Fallen Order was able to do that a little bit when Cal talks to BD. He's kind of talking his inner monologue. I wonder how much of that there's going to be, but in this novel, um, yeah, it's going to be interesting, and almost like how we saw with Trilla, uh, maybe a bit more backstory to this Inquisitor. That's also possible too. I don't know.
Good to see the
Uh,
Inquisitors getting love, man.
yes,
It's
there we
like
go. Yeah, it's true. It's also to be the second novel involving Inquisitors coming out this coming year, right? So that's another little tidbit. Yeah, Inquisitors are kind of getting their due a little bit.
yeah.
Um, they're kind of a farce in Rebels a little bit, but that's because Rebels is does skew younger. But here, yeah, a little older. This novel comes out March 7th, 2023. So I expect to see our coverage here on the Ion Canon podcast as That's gonna be expected. Okay. Um, Survivor itself, EA Star Wars, the main, and the EA Star Wars and the main Star Wars social accounts, they released this new image of Jedi Survivor, along with the announcement that the action-packed gameplay will be on display at the Game Awards live stream this Thursday, December 8th. Yeah, and then they're hopefully going to release a trailer. Hopefully, it's going to be not the trailer that we saw at Celebration. It was released during Celebration. That wasn't hidden in a panel. That was just sent out to the internet for all to see because there was no Jedi Survivor panel at Celebration. So, yeah, the Game Awards, why not? And maybe they will talk about a release date. There have been leaked release dates, March 15th or 16th, I've heard. So, yeah, again, just so the March 7th novel comes out March 7th. Video game comes out a week later. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time for Cal. I mean, probably not a good time for Cal, but a good time for fans of Jedi Fallen Order, which is one of the most beautiful stories in the new canon. And yeah, looking forward to this one. What do you think of this image? And what do you think of everything with Jedi Survivor? I should add one more thing before we dive into that. Really, some interesting clothing skins, some lightsabers you can get with the deluxe edition if you pre-order, including an Obi-Wan inspired hermit cloak and
Nice.
Obi-Wan's lightsaber. So I don't know what if there's already probably not necessarily any kind of canon story connection there, but those types of things. But yeah, nice little nod to the Kenobi show, which we don't talk about as much. Andor's kind of overshadowed it in the popular imagination, so good to keep that alive. What do you think of this image of everything to do with Survivor coming out in March?
Oh yeah, so a few things. Again, we got some scars on Cal Kestis' face. Like if you zoom in the poster, you can actually see it. Cal has like a tattoo on his arm that he's holding the lightsaber with. You can't barely see it, but it's right there. Looks like a tattoo.
He also has that bangle thing.
It's over the bangle, so it's like you can see like a little bit of it. It's a little dark spot on his skin. And it's really hard to see, and someone had to point this out to me. But in the distance, in the clouds, you see like this moon thing, and it's like it's got
up top there,
kind of like an opening hole in it. I'm kind of curious what that's about. It reminds me of Starkiller Base a little bit, but we've already went to Ilum last episode. I mean last game, so so that's interesting.
Or Death Star.
Or no, that's not Death Star. That's not
okay.
The Death Star.
It's hard for me to tell. My screen is kind of like this small here.
Okay, that's not the Death Star.
Yeah.
That's
I'll have to give a closer look. Also, one thing I noticed when I zoomed in a little bit, what is BD1 looking at? What is a Jedi doing with such an uncivilized weapon like that?
Oh yeah, you got the blaster.
That's wild. I mean, I think you get a little bit of that in High Republic, but Hokey Dinah. You can have lightsaber and blaster action. It's gonna be fun.
I'm kind of curious what that tower thing in the background is, or that's just a big old rock.
I think that's the ship. That's the Mantis.
Okay, that's the Mantis. Just the Mantis. Yeah. So I was like, oh, what's a So I guess I'll ask you a question, Matthew, and that is, what do you think Cal Kestis' fate is gonna be in terms of like, well, we gotta get, like all Jedi, like, okay, well, Luke Skywalker's gotta be the special one here before Return of the Jedi. So is he gonna die, or is he off to the unknown regions to wait with the other Jedi until it's time to like, okay, come back. Luke doesn't need to be important anymore.
Hop on a Purgle with Thrawn is what he's gonna do. No, I'm just kidding.
I have joked, but I'm serious too.
That's a good question because, I mean, spoiler alert, he destroys the holocron with all the young Jedi just to hide them. I mean, it's still a wider question of what to do with all these Jedi that are floating around that don't join the Rebel Alliance, don't link things up. They had to deal with Ezra. They had to deal with Ahsoka. Yeah, that's a good. I honestly don't. Maybe unknown regions too. Maybe something to do with. Maybe they're sort of setting things up intentionally, unintentionally, for Rey to find them all. I have no idea. Unless he eats it, that could be possible. He's a survivor, but not, and maybe part of this game is embracing the reality of death. Yeah, it's
Uh,
honestly either that or the blaster signifies that he just goes into hiding and puts away his saber again. He's done that before, um, but we'll see.
yeah, because it's like, uh, from a story perspective, like from the pure artistry perspective, I do kind of think death is sort of a kind of a beautiful way to end it.
Mhm.
But this is a marketable character. We gotta make games, so you
True,
can't kill him off.
true.
And I also think that he got a better chance of, once the game side of things are done, popping into other things.
Mhm,
Once the games are kind of done with him, or they're gonna making them, which who knows at this point.
mhm.
Going with the blaster, I don't know. It feels a little regressive. It's like, well, you're just back to where you started in the first game, but just had more experience. Um,
At the beginning of at the end of the first game or the beginning of the first game?
Beginning of the first game where you just like
Yeah,
totally done. I don't want to be Jedi anymore. I'm scared. I don't use my force powers
so
anymore.
that's interesting because I think in terms of not so much regressing, but picking up what he's gained, even everything on Baraka, because he kind of has to reject that in order to leave and reject let Prof die in order to go and embrace his Jedi-ness. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but yeah, I mean, I think that might be poetic in the sense of he's during Order 66 he's forced into that, whereas at the end of this he might actually intentionally choose into that as a Jedi, as part of his Jedi path. The way Kanan, I think ultimately, no, not so much Kanan. Maybe I don't know, I'm trying to think. Maybe Ahsoka, Obi-Wan to some extent, chooses into this hiding part of Jedi path. I do want to get to this comment. Yeah, I kind of forgot a little bit, but it's also fun to just make fun of Jedi who have blasters. Um, yeah, it's true. I'm trying to think here. I mean, yeah, I know. Obviously, I'm Bespin. He has the blaster. I mean, he's a Jedi. He's also a Republic pilot or rebel pilot. So yeah, fair enough. I should start making fun of him now in ESP. There we
Uh,
go. Yeah,
I mean, I guess then, well, there is that whole Zepho plot that kind of is still there. So, and that
yeah,
seems very unknown regiony kind of
true.
thing. So, I mean, I kind of feel like the kind of the get out of jail free card
Mhm,
is once again just have him go to the unknown regions and be kind of MIA while the Empire stuff goes down. And so
yeah,
Yoda's words still mean something. And then once the Empire's gone, then all the Jedi can start, or ex Jedi can start like coming back in, like, hey, you were free, yay!
yeah.
I
I
guess I'm
mean,
trying to think of a way Cal is off the board per se, in the way I think they did well with Ezra and Kanan.
I mean, maybe he continues, Cordova's research.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that, now I'm trying to find, Cordova Padawan. Um, yeah, like because I mean she's his Padawan. Here we go. We'll go back to this one. Um, goodness gracious me, why am I blanking on people's names? It's bad that actually I'm starting to look things up here. Sirjanda, of course.
Yeah.
Um, Seer was Cordova's Padawan. Cal isn't exactly Seer's Padawan, but Seer knows a lot of what Cordova was up to. Um, that's why she knew to pick Cal up, and sort of had a sense of where to go and what to do. Um, yeah, maybe they go to the unknown regions to try and find the Zepho. Maybe I don't know. In the comments, viewers, pop in the comments. What do you think Cal's fate is at the end of Jedi Survivor here? Let us know. Let us know on the, the social medias, Twitter and Instagram at Ion Cannon Pod. And yeah, looking forward to this again. Probably March 15th, 16th. It'll be fun. I'll probably watch the playthroughs on YouTube. I know
Same.
Joel, yeah, watch the
Same.
playthroughs on YouTube. Also
Yeah.
in the comments, let us know if you're going to play the game or watch the playthroughs or whatnot. I'm definitely looking forward to this. Anyways, either way, your final thoughts on Jedi Survivor news.
Excited for the game. Excited for another big Star Wars video game. And kind of curious where Cal's story it continues. As I've said, sort of like, well, we keep adding these Jedi in between episodes 4 and 5. So I mean 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Where are all you people? Is this another crook situation? He's just hiding a
Yeah.
Jedi Order in secret that doesn't show up until 100 years later.
Maybe.
Like, where were
Maybe
you
no.
during the Death Star?
I mean, we know what Ray's up to. We know Ray's gone off to find ancient Jedi.
Old Cal Kestis. Old
Well,
man Cal
Cass is
Kestis.
trying to find the Zepho. There we go. All right. So yeah, Joel, I have a question for you. Speaking of Space Wizard, speaking of Cal Kestis, speaking of all that, what makes what makes for an ideal Jedi?
Well, Jedi, the guardian of peace and justice in the old republic for over 1,000 generations. Yes, that is the question, isn't it? Of what does make and for an ideal Jedi. You know, the Jedi are such an interesting organization. We've talked about them politically and religiously, but like, what do they value? What makes for the ideal Jedi? Before I begin, because our podcast is a democracy, the people have decided. Talk on what? I'm such a nerd. We I did a poll on our Ion Canon podcast, and I realized I probably should have added more people
Well,
because
ignore this down here. Just we're talking about stuff up here.
yeah, on who was the ideal Jedi for fans. Obviously, and I put kind of the three choices, although we had more choices on our thumbnail, strangely.
You can see who I
Um,
voted for.
yeah. Qui-Gon Jinn won out with 52.2% of the vote, pretty clear majority. Caden got 26.1% of the vote, and Ahsoka got 21.7% of the vote. Clearly, we know who the majority is, but an interesting tie for second.
Mhm.
And I chose those three. Even though we had more on our thumbnail, I wanted to put Ray in there just because I like Ray. In terms because actually because of a forum post where it's like someone was saying, I'm not sure if I feel how I feel about Qui-Gon being the ideal Jedi. And they say like I felt like Kanan was, and then when I told you about the poll, you should add Ahsoka too, like, oh, that's a good idea. So it's interesting. So sort of like, I guess the question, if these three are kind of to me good examples of the ideal Jedi, like what do they all represent? They're certainly Mavericks for sure. They obviously don't believe necessarily in like the institutional structures of the council and the rule books and the temple bureaucracy of it all. Qui-Gon probably the most out of the three of them. Probably does. Ahsoka less so, and probably Kanan even less so. But he's kind of in the weird middle ground. They're both servants of the cosmic force for sure. They are both good at both empathy, but also detachment for their own personal selves. Um, and they're obviously just, to quote Claudia Gray a little bit, just servants of the light. Or I just prefer to call it servants of the force because I'm kind of in that weird camp of like, do we really just need to call it light? Let's call it the force. So they did in the original trilogy, and I think that makes sense for me.
I want to camp on that for a second.
Sure.
Like, that shouldn't be the weird camp. That's the George Lucas camp.
That's it.
It's not some like political partisanship. Oh, both sidism, whatever. No, it's the light side and the unlight side. Yeah, I know.
No,
That's my pulpit right there. I know.
Unnatural. The natural and the unnatural. So, yeah, like you said, I think these are kind of the ideals of what a Jedi should be. But Matthew, what are your like? If you had to like list some things down, what do you think are the core ideals of a Jedi? What they strive to be?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. You talk about we raised those three. At least Ahsoka and Kanan are forced through the dark times and respond to the dark times. Ahsoka, at the very beginning of especially of the dark times, where she sees just how far the Jedi have fallen, have corrupted, as becoming servants of the dark and have fallen to the dark side. So she ups and leaves. The ability to actually see what is happening, able to see, through the shroud of the dark side, because of the habits and the commitment to moral character and integrity that they've developed over their lives. And Qui-Gon is the same way. He is able to understand and see sort of the way Dooku was, able to see how corrupt the Jedi had become. Um, but Dooku was led to a very opposite conclusion. Qui-Gon would never have joined him. Dooku, actually, I'd say, is what happens when you attempt to be a gray Jedi. You just slip and fall all the way to becoming a Sith or becoming to the dark side. So Qui-Gon is able to see at great personal risk. He could have been not great personal risk, but ultimately great personal risk. He ultimately meets his demise at trying to take action, not trying to, taking action for the sake of the galaxy as a whole in confronting Maul. It's not that the Jedi Council forbade him or opposed him. They supported him in confronting Maul, but he would never attain to becoming a master of the council. And so, there is that ideal of saying those institutional interests, my own personal institutional interests, aren't what matters. It's where can I best serve the light, and again, bring up that Claudia Gray quote, because it is the light, and that's where you get that quote of that whole idea of it's not some competition between light and dark. Oh no, who's gonna win? No, I gotta go here now. The light is already won. The light is the source of life in the galaxy, in the universe. And it's not a Sith thing, and I'll explain why in a second. It's either you go with the light or you go against the light. And what I mean by that, it's not either you're with me or against me, a Sith dealing in absolutes, a Jedi dealing in absolutes. It's if you get that serving the light means being open to those who are different, being open to the way the Force moves in a variety of different ways. And we see that especially, and we saw that in Phase 1 of the High Republic, especially with the Padawans and young knights, who did have this ability to be open and welcoming, even as they were struggling and suffering through and trying to make their way as teenagers, as young people, trying to find out who they are and what the light, the Force is calling them to be and guiding them to be. What I found when I was thinking about this is it isn't so much the ideal Jedi, isn't so much a static being, like you already possess these attributes somehow in yourself, because that just isn't possible. We're not perfectible in that way. I mean, a compelling character, an ideal character. Yeah, you can talk about characteristics in the abstract, but sorry, breathe. It's not so much an ideal as a static being, but an opened and determined becoming, and as in moving forward, moving towards those ideals, moving towards more integrity, more openness. And so, I do see characters like Reith Silas. I mean, I'm kind of biased. I relate to him a lot, but as a knight, he's going to be able to integrate his ability to sit with books, learn from the past, understand why things happened the way they did. Think about, okay, what can that mean for today? What do we have to let go of? What do we have to let die of the past? What do we have to save what we love? And I can see that with Reith. Bell, he has his own struggles too, but he's able to, with integrity, move forward. And so, what's interesting, you asked, is the High Republic this ideal time? In a way, yeah, they are free. There's free to be more diverse, free to be more open as a whole, free to accept people who are different ways of being a Jedi. You can be a way seeker, you can be a master on the council, or you can be a master on the council who goes and steps down for a little bit and goes to train a bunch of younglings. We can do that. But what we do see, especially in the big three that are posited as the big three of Stellan, Avar, and Elzar, they're not the heroes. They're not the main characters. they're the ones who are actually at their best aware of how far they are from the ideal. At their worst, we see them forgetting how far they are from the ideal. Stellan is the superstar that you deals with celebrity and the pressures of celebrity until the nameless force him to break, and he actually has to come to depend on other people. Avar, similar thing where she is the marshal, she's the great leader, the gleaming symbol, the hero of Hetzel, and yet she has this vendetta against this ruthless vendetta, violent vendetta against Niall in Kevin Scott's comic, and Keith Trennis actually has to tell her to stop. She's a young knight, to tell basic order Master Avar Chris to stop murdering Lorna D. So yeah, it's this funny question because it's hard to answer and almost impossible to answer, but more about what direction you're headed. And I think this is true about life, really. It's more about what direction you're headed than are you headed towards integrity, towards learning more about other people, curiosity, openness, moving towards speaking the truth confidently when you know it will be the most constructive path. Are you moving towards that more than, oh, I have this already set and figured out already? Because once you think you already have things set and figured out, then you very quickly realize you don't. So maybe part of the ideal Jedi is like you see with Qui-Gon, for example, is someone who gets that he doesn't have it all together.
Well, no, I think you brought up a good point of like always striving for betterness and whatnot. And what's interesting about the three I picked for the poll is something you brought up in the earlier. It's like when I asked the question, it's like, is it easier or harder to find a better self in such a difficult time? And the answer is not really. Not everyone can. It's actually a lot easier for people to find themselves and better themselves if they have the ideal situations.
True.
You're a Star Trek fan. The whole point of Star Trek is like, okay, we got rid of all the stuff that makes life suck, like money and
Yeah.
bad healthcare and whatnot. I mean, a little vague on how that actually works, but the ideal is like, okay, we built a society / government / something that, at least on Earth, that's sort of like, okay, now we can just kind of explore ourselves and and whatnot. At least that's the hope. And, it's like not just for Jedi, but for everyone. Like, you kind of ask yourself, what if Cyril Karn was born in a better time on Coruscant than during the Empire? Maybe he wouldn't have turned out the way he did, or maybe he would have felt recognized or formed better. He's not an inherently evil person. I just think society kind of crushed him and ruined him. And time to go back to the light versus the dark, the way I've always sort of seen it, it's the natural versus the unnatural. The Empire, the dark side, it is unnatural. The conformity, the brutalism, the just kind of, and then you get to the weirder stuff with like trying to prevent deaths and just completely strip people of their free will. Which like if Palpatine had a mind control ray, oh boy, he would love that. That to him is like everyone will just think like me because I will be everyone. Get weird, like bored kind of stuff.
Which makes you wonder what Kira is up to, and with the both the Ascendant, the Thought Dowser, and the Fermata Cage, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Palpatine would love that stuff, just to kind of be everything. But I kind of step back a little bit. Like, did the Jedi Order fall because of not just with them choices, but the society that was developing around them? And it's like, what choice did they really have? A war was going on. If they were going to fight, Count Dooku was going to attack them no matter what. That was the plan that Sidious wanted. What are they going to do? Just sit on their hands, go? It's like, well, what can we do? And even Count Dooku was like, he if the Republic wasn't so corrupt and for whatever gazillion reasons, he might have been a great Jedi. He might have not needed to feel so radicalized by seeing the hypocrisies and the decay of the long decline of the Republic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting at a great point here in that um, times of ease, times of comfort are not necessarily. Sorry, Gene Roddenberry, not necessarily times of moral betterment. Um, they could be times of we got to make all the moral compromises we can
Oops,
to
sorry.
preserve. It's okay. We'll get to that comment in a second. We got to make. Oh no, we got to delete that person. Never mind. Um,
It's on Twitch, so I don't know how.
okay. We'll take care of it. Anyway, we gotta make the moral compromises, as much moral compromises as we can, in order to preserve this ease and this comfort. And how dare anyone? How dare a cardiovascular disease come and say cardiovascular pandemic come and say, oh no, I have to mask and I have to work from home and I have to get vaccinated and all that stuff. How dare that happen? We're just gonna ignore it. How dare the ozone layer be full of uh, or be breaking apart because what's going on with the ultraviolets being trapped into, and, so the sun ray, the heat from the sun is being trapped in the atmosphere, and so our temperature is going up. How dare that happen? We got to ignore it. Just drill, baby, drill, drive, baby, drive. Seeing as someone who drives to work every day, but um, you know, yeah, it's not necessarily a time of moral betterment. On the other hand, right, and at the same time, a crisis really, and I said this about High Republic Phase 1 at the beginning, crisis really reveals who you are, where you're at. And Star Wars loves to throw characters into crisis. Um, the crisis of Luke learning who his father is really throws him into the depths of well, it throws his character into the depths of where he is and what he cares about, and is he gonna lose his training to go help his friends? Is he gonna fall to the dark side and join his father just because he's gonna accept that that's his blood? The crisis of Rey learning potentially that her parents are nobodies and are not coming back, that they're dead. Um, what does she choose to do? She chooses to ignore Kylo Ren's gaslighting and join and continue to found family of the Resistance. Yeah, maybe that's another thing is Crisis tests what an ideal Jedi is and what direction you're going in. And yeah, I mean, so there's that point. On the other hand, at least leisure, at least material comfort makes room for potential for philanthropic choices, for time to sit back and reflect on the meaning of life, as opposed to uh, being so concerned about where your next meal is coming from, that you do got to do what you got to do. On the counter argument there, the most generous people in the world are poorer people. So go figure, who knows? And
But we still want those poor people to be uplifted economically. So
yes, so that's the thing is, it's the people who get that we're all in this together. Whereas the more wealthy you are, the more likely you are to believe that you've actually earned it. You've earned your way by working hard, by being morally upright, even if you weren't necessarily, um, even if you just inherited everything from your parents. All those advantages that come with wealth and privilege don't necessarily lead to a sense of we're all in this together. Lead to a sense of I can go take over Twitter and bring Donald Trump back in. you know, so yeah, again, it's a great question. And yeah, I mean, it's probably why the dark times, why we see Kanan and Ahsoka go through that crisis, right? We see Obi-Wan Kenobi go through that crisis, and for the first 10 years of it, he's pretty darn cynical. He's pretty darn closed in on himself. He's afraid. That's understandable. Guilty for what he believes he's done to the galaxy by unleashing Darth Vader in the galaxy. But then by the end, he is able to, well, in the middle, he's able to turn his direction to support Luke and Leia as the New Hope, and let Vader strike him down and become more powerful than he can imagine.
It's honestly kind of surprising and shocking that the Republic didn't become authoritarian earlier. than it did in Star Wars. And maybe it did, and we just haven't heard that story of like they
Mhm.
had an authoritarian chancellor, but they resigned. They still followed the rules and didn't have to go full hog empire.
Mhm.
Um, we might talk about that in another discussion because I just read up something very interesting about that.
Interesting. Okay.
That has to deal with our real world.
Mhm.
But no, you're right. I do believe more that the economics can definitely are important, and uh, not having to deal with healthcare and
Mhm.
I do agree. I think Roddenberry's ideals were too far fetched. I never liked the whole humans don't have problems anymore. We're just all friendly. La, la, la. It's like no,
To
that's
be
not.
fair, I mean, by the time he died, that went out the window.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Even
I was
TNG.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was. That's why I like this more.
Yeah. DS9
But
was a situation. Yeah.
I do believe that that uh you know having that sort of a better society just in general
Mhm.
and trying to strive for something will definitely help your chances of getting more people to be better, or at least
Yeah.
uplifting the right people. Hopefully, I'm sure like the high Republic era Jedi were probably a little bit more,
That's
they're
true. That's an example of it. I mean, there is something to be said if we can say have an incentive. Here's getting our political science brains on here.
Mhm.
Like show people the incentive of being morally good, of caring for your neighbor and caring for your neighbor across the country. you know, show people that lifts everybody up, and not the rising tide lifting all boats because people drown, but um, you know, sharing the load, sharing the weight is what makes light work.
The difference between like, okay, what's wrong with the Jedi Order when someone like Mace Windu's getting on the council and compared to, I don't know, compared to like a Qui-Gon or
Yeah.
like, I don't know, who would you say like who would have been like a really good council member in the High Republic era to like, oh, promote them. They're the great.
Hmm.
They should
Yeah.
be taking on some leadership roles. Um,
Yeah. I mean, all the ones they're too young still. So something. I mean,
and
was Loden on the council? I don't know if he was necessarily on the council. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of the Obi-Wan of that era, just the one who dies early to inspire Bell and whatnot. But
yeah, so that like that's sort of like from just a societal standpoint in terms of
mhm,
like the ideal Jedi. It's like that I'm sure it helps to have a healthier society compared to like, but obviously the three I picked in the poll, they're all there around during like the worst times.
yeah,
So and I do agree, a crisis does reveal your true self, but I think the world always needs to be in crisis. I don't believe that art. It's like the whole art is always good when there's adversity. It's like I mean sometimes that's true, but sometimes
true.
people want to make their movie and not have to deal with just a terrible set and
That's true.
have a little efficiency for the workers, the actors. That'd be nice.
Mhm,
Having actually good catering and stuff like that.
yeah,
Not all Hollywood needs to be terrible. You know, uh,
I
and I
mean,
get like,
it's possible. Like I hope. I mean, I'm fairly well off compared to the rest of the world. I hope I do all right morally. It's possible. Um, but to be morally more upright, even in a place of comfort and wealth, it just where does that come from? Where does I mean that's this age old question of being morally good. Where does that come from? I kind of come back to Qui-Gon's point here. I'm going to come back to this. It's you know, are you do you care about this game of winning and losing? Do you care about winning, and so you're gonna see the light side as this thing that has to win against the dark, or do you care about going with the wide great flow of the galaxy and the source of all life itself? And are you going to latch onto that, and you're going to be able to see then let that light see the light in others? um yeah, and so it, that can happen. You can still have that can happen if you're not so concerned about where your next meal is going to come from. But again, I think it's just maybe it's just more likely that folks who know they need to bend together. Here's a great example: is during the Great Depression. It's a very Canadian example for you. the reason we have a slightly better than terrible healthcare system is during the Great Depression. This is actually more history time. I'm back here. During the Great Depression, uh, so Eastern Canada, Ontario, Quebec, we were fine. Alberta was fine, had lots of oil. Saskatchewan was a province, somewhat, has provinces have more independent relationship with the federal government than a territory does. Uh, During the Depression, the banks left Saskatchewan. All the businesses pulled out. All they had was wheat, and wheat was worth, I guess, nothing, and just people couldn't buy food. Um, the federal government was going to downgrade them to a territory and just take away their provincial rights as a province to pass their own laws and determine their own well-being. And as a province, they banded together and formed credit unions, formed a a provincial owned energy company, provincial owned telecom company, and from there birthed the idea, okay, we need to actually have provincially mandated healthcare and provincially administered healthcare. And in this time of crisis of the Great Depression, we've got to band together. We've got to come together. It is what rural people do. They just often do it on a smaller scale than us city folks tend to see. They do it on a smaller scale that they're more suspicious of when it gets escalated up to the size of a city or of a country. But at their best, they do band together in a crisis, and yeah, that again reveals what an ideal Jedi is: someone who can encourage people to band together, and we see that with Bell in the Fallen Star. They know Starlight Beacon has been split in two; it's about to go crash. Bell goes and actually gets the help of all these pilots, these civilian pilots, or not necessarily civilian pilots. He's not going to be all, okay, us Jedi, we have to figure this out. Let's all come together and figure it out together. Let's add supports. Let's try and get the escape pods working. All these great ideas that Stellan actually wasn't able to think about because he was so caught up in, oh yeah, the Jedi have to figure it out. And it's another thing of seeing and including and gathering people who can actually come together and not just solve but work through and find the path through this crisis.
Right, and I think in times when that happens more than often, that probably helps get more Jedi to kind of rise to the top. And then in times of, like, the dark times when Palpatine's just like, I'll just do it myself. That's probably when less Jedi, more Mace Windu's come to the fruition. It does make you wonder, though, like, what did the Jedi see in the Republic to make them the guardians of the Republic? I don't want to get too much into, because this might get into another topic, but like this political entity, and not like they chose, let's be the guardians of this monarchy, the kingdom of Happy Land. It's like, it makes you wonder.
It's what made them think that the Republic was just the place. Yeah, I'll think about that. I'll think about that.
Yeah,
sounds like a topic for another episode.
Yeah. Let's see. And I guess, to round it off, we chose our three on-screen Jedi: Ahsoka, Qui-Gon, and Kanan. Kanan was sort of an odd one, but it was more because I got the idea from the form. And I do like Kanan, because I feel like he's sort of I think by the end he very much embodies the Jedi ideal. He sacrifices himself for the family, his family, and the cause, and he shows love and compassion to Hera and Ezra, and like they are his family, they are his kids. And obviously he's gonna have a kid. He did have a kid. So I do consider Kanan very much both an ideal Jedi and also someone who kind of is maybe a different model, because obviously he did. He the dad. He's the dad who he didn't get to live to see his kids.
Yeah.
So he was okay with doing more of that business compared to Qui-Gon.
There's that.
and I don't know if Ahsoka's not interested in that either. I'm sure,
Mhm.
if that she's not, that's fine. But it's like Qui Gon definitely didn't seem to have any romantic, in general.
As far as we know, well, that raises an interesting thing. If Qui Gon's such a great ideal, why did he let himself be so sexually repressed and didn't go and just find love? Because he
Well, actually,
didn't.
there was some questions about Qui Gon's idealism in terms of like why didn't he work harder to get Shmi off the planet and free those
Yeah,
slaves. And
that's
also
true.
someone brought up the fact it's like he's okay with the Hutts being in charge in Tatooine. It's like I mean I guess you're
Hmm.
not going and just randomly destroying a political order and causing more problems is necessarily that's the great ideal either. But it's sort of like
Mhm.
you're pretty okay, Qui-Gon, with the Hutts being in charge, and you should know what the Hutts are all doing. A bajillion not
Yeah,
good thing.
I mean, was
Um,
he okay with it, or he understood that he had a task at hand, and there's
I
only
mean, probably
so
a
much we
little.
could do. You know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
probably a little of both. I mean, he's not going. I mean, I do. I mean, Qui-Gon's
Mm.
obviously still. It's weird. People could call Qui-Gon a maverick, but he follows the rules of the Order. He doesn't necessarily like. He's not going out there like I'm going to kill Jabba the Hutt because the Jabba the Hutt's a slave trader, and I'm going to destroy this
Mhm.
guy. No, he's not going on doing vigilante things.
Right.
So like, well, Jabba's in charge. Can't really do anything about it because that will destroy the whole political order. Can't really,
Exactly.
which some
It
might
would,
argue
might cause
that's
more suffering in that moment. You know.
not very radical. Help the people of Tatooine organize, unionize.
I
Union
mean,
on.
at what point do you
Um,
get into Saw Gerrera territory there, right?
that's true.
You know what I mean?
And then but with Ahsoka, obviously, I mean, I think she's very much an ideal to continue
Hmm.
because she's very much a servant of the light in all ways.
Hmm.
Doing the wizard thing. So she's grown quite a lot. So I definitely she's up there like with Qui Gon as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned in terms of like getting closer to that kind of almost close to the Valhalla moment of
Mm.
the lightness of light. So
Interesting.
um I guess a lot of it kind of depends on like do you see it as more of a spiritual thing or it's like do you want actual grounded tangent results in terms of like we gotta get rid of Java because he's the gangster of Tatooine. Let's
Hmm.
start organizing something for a better tomorrow. Um,
I mean,
or like
maybe Qui Gon at another point in his life he would have.
that's true. I mean, we don't know a lot about what Qui Gon did during his
Hmm.
time. It's like he could have been
Sure.
going out just kind of helping organize things and
Hmm.
bettering communities in general. We don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, Not enough books about him. But
That
there's
should
definitely
change. We need more
that should
books, more
change.
Qui Gon
That
books.
That could change. I agree. But that's sort of that kind of question. It's like, but it did help the kind of the Naboo kind of the
Hmm.
Gungans and the Naboo kind of with. I mean, obviously, kind of lean there. Like, okay, let's get these two species kind of realize you have an idea. Let's kind of
Hmm.
work together here. So yeah, I think it's a very just sort of the three. But in terms of book characters, you
Right.
brought up a few, but do you have any particulars? You're like these are kind of on Qui Gon, Ahsoka, and Kanan level Jedi.
I mean, first to say, I think about Qui Gon in part because of a novel, um,
That's true.
including thinking about how,
Novel original character.
yeah, he's not a novel original. I thought about thinking about that. Again, I mentioned all these High Republic characters and how, yeah, this thing about, I mean, uh, a good story is about traversing the distance between what is real and what's ideal, and again, it's about direction. So really, I mean, all the heroes are meant to embody ideals. But yeah, it's sorry, we're definitely getting spammed here. Never mind.
We're making it. We're
We're,
making his
we're
podcast.
making it. We're getting spammed. Um, yeah. So honestly, none really came to mind. Possibly none of them or all of them. Um, Again, because what do we mean by ideal? What direction they're going in? I'll say, well, I guess she isn't the book first character, but the way Ray is able to just so naturally pick up the light is compelling. Um, Yeah, just trying to think again.
It's interesting
Yeah.
because I remember in a lot of the marketing for High Republic, and maybe I'm just misremembering,
Mhm.
but I could be wrong. I always felt like High Republic was like this was like the Jedi as they should be, the ideal, these are the golden years. Like this is when
Yes.
like oh when the Jedi are when Luke thinks of what the Jedi should be, this is what it is. And
That's
it's
such a
funny how he's
boring
like
story, Joel.
I know. It was like I know that, but it's like I just find it funny, like marketing wise, like oh that's what it is, and like and you're like I can't really think of anybody who reaches
I
like
will
a Qui
say,
Gon level.
I wonder if Kiev is being set up to be this. We know Kevin Scott has her story planned out. Hopefully, he gets to tell it. Hopefully, maybe in phase 3, maybe not. Um, how she becomes the 19th Master to lead the Order, for reasons that I'm convinced are the opposite of Dooku. Are probably far more along the lines of Ahsoka.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, even like I mentioned, how she's able to recognize that Avar has gone too far with Lorna D. How even though she has her doubts as she's just been knighted, she is able to go and connect with the Drengir. She's able to take care of Skier and show compassion to him. So yeah, and then hopefully, like Ahsoka, she's probably going to be able to see where the Jedi are headed, and maybe unlike Qui Gon, she determines that the best course of action is to leave because that's the only way for her to really be present with the people of the galaxy and actually maybe like we were saying with Qui-Gon, you know, taking action against the Huts and against slavery, institutions of slavery, and actually doing her best to help people.
Let
Uh,
let me ask
it's
you this
possible.
curveball question.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe not the ideal, but certainly maybe something that maybe elevates Ahsoka over Qui-Gon.
Hmm.
Although we never knew because he never died. Because he died. But maybe something that allows you to kind of reach a higher level of I don't want to say enlightenment or anything like that,
You could.
but
I
they're
mean,
like continuing to go further is the ability to leave, to just go,
yeah.
you know what, Jedi Order institution, you suck.
At that
I
point in
don't
their
know.
history, yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Is
Harsh,
yeah.
is it true? But yeah, it's like to leave and technically not be a Jedi, technically, but by
Hmm.
doing so, also probably be more true to the Jedi ideal than any. And I'm kind of curious if Qui Gon would have left. Cause I don't know. I like to think he wouldn't. Honestly, as strange as that might sound, I think he would.
Hmm.
I think he was more of a institutionalist, shall we say, than I think
Hmm.
fans want to give credit for.
Yeah, I mean, he exists at a different point in history. He
If he had
exists
lived,
between, yes, true. If he lived, just between, say, someone like Orla Jarani who can go and be a way seeker, uh, or and then Ahsoka who just has to up and leave. He's somewhere in between there. He's also older. So what I'm getting at is it's different circumstances, different life circumstances,
that's
um,
true.
different choices available to them, different implications. Being a Padawan who leaves has one set of implications versus a master who leaves has another. That's why they make the busts out of them, right? The point of the busts aren't to say that these these horrible people look at they failed. The point of the bust is to say we as an order failed them, and by that logic they should make a statue for Ahsoka, but uh, the lesson learned from Kiev. Hopefully, I mean with Dooku, it's just too late at that point, but maybe Ahsoka looks at that, looks at how, um, I mean, it's hard to say that the Order really failed Dooku. When he's clearly so self-interested in at that point, but maybe seeing the Order failed to train him to be more selfless. you know, failed to train him to care about others. I think with Qui Gon, it is about discerning. I use that term a lot. It is a spiritual term. Figuring out what's the most good I can do. And for him, really, I mean, that's the thing Master and Apprentice really brings out is the best thing he could do with his whole life at that point is to train Obi-Wan to be the most ideal Jedi possible. And I don't know if Obi-Wan's the ideal Jedi. He is the one who is, I think, most honest about the uh, being caught in that impossible situation of being a master on the council while your former Padawan is going off the deep end and fathering a child, and uh, in that context where that's difficult. Um,
Uh, I
you know,
would.
so good.
I was gonna say I would put this scenario out there is that
Mhm.
high chance Qui-Gon does leave just so he can train Anakin, kind of rogue style. I could just totally see
Yeah,
that going down, maybe.
I mean, again, Qui Gon could see the end of the Order too. You'd see that it was around the corner. Does he go down with the ship? Does he find ways to survive? We don't know. I mean, George Lucas intentionally says, "No, I'm not going to tell you that story. um,
Yeah.
I'm going to actually remove the highest good from the board, so the remaining characters have to figure it out and muddle through and fail, and realize that the greatest teacher failure is." So,
It,
yeah.
one more thing, and we'll try to
Mhm.
wrap up. Is I guess that we haven't talked about him, but it's funny we talked about the ideal Jedi, and I feel like for a long time people thought he was the ideal Jedi, but clearly the idea was no, he actually wasn't.
Mhm.
They had Yoda.
Yeah.
For many people, especially just kind of considering Empire Strikes Back, pre the prequels,
Mhm.
Yoda he was the wisest of the wise, the
Mhm.
like there's this little puppet guy. But also what's funny is an Empire and Return of the Jedi start to play with this, and I think people didn't quite catch on until the prequels,
Mhm.
and kind of were a little blindsided. Even though it's there, it's like the whole point of Empire and Return of the Jedi is Yoda and Obi-Wan are wrong. They're kind of in the wrong in terms of you gotta kill him. Just go there,
Yeah,
kill Vader.
it's true.
Uh, you know that's gonna solve a lot of problems. Just kill Vader. I always say kill Vader, never kill the Emperor. It's like what? I think you gotta take out the Emperor, dude. Um,
Yeah,
Palpatine, you can find a replacement. Like no, you gotta kill him. You know, he lost
because he's
cause.
their failure, right?
Right.
Anakin is their failure. So Luke,
Um.
go clean up our failure.
Um.
That's too harsh. It's saying they're so fixated on that being their
Maybe in
failure.
some
Yeah.
ways it's kind of like, these two will fix our mess for us. It's a joke a little bit,
Yeah.
but they're supposed to be wrong. They're in the wrong, and that's why Luke is right. Even down to
Mhm.
you must not go to save Han and Leia because it is a trap.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and you could argue maybe both Yoda and Luke were right because things didn't go down quite well. But
Right.
Leia was still rescued. Um, well, she did more of the rescuing herself.
This is true. I mean, the thing in Return of the Jedi saying, saying it's not wrong that he knows the truth, that Luke knows the truth, is that he was so eager to go. I mean, the thing that Yoda is right about is that Luke was so eager to go and confront Vader and trying to kill him himself. Um,
Right.
but not ready for the burden. Um,
So,
but yeah, sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
but it's interesting that even when I think Yoda is probably far more wiser in the Empire Return of the Jedi era and learned a lot of the same mistakes. There's still just a few things he's still kind of maybe wrong about in terms of
Mhm.
Anakin per se. Um, and Obi-Wan as well.
Yeah.
That's sort of their personal bias come into fruition. I guess we haven't talked about Luke. I mean, we mentioned Ray a little bit. I mean,
Mhm.
I think fans would love to see Luke as the ideal Jedi, but even Luke, flawed and obviously with Kylo Ren, definitely kind of
Yeah.
something that he didn't really had to pass on his own failures as well.
I mean, I
I
don't
mean,
think Luke is supposed to be the ideal ever. He's supposed to
yeah,
be the compelling main character of the original trilogy.
no, right, I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, if anyone's supposed to be an ideal, it's Leia in that equation.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I
Yeah.
think that's why Yoda, in a certain point of view, is like, why did we trade Leia? She's perfect.
Yeah.
She'll kill Vader. She'll do those things. Luke's gonna
Mhm.
be all like, you see Lucas
Space.
just hit
Yeah.
his head in the
Uh,
clouds.
yeah.
Um,
Literally.
well, I mean, if you watch
Literally has his head in the clouds, dangling from
exactly.
Cloud City. I just got that.
Um, but no, I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
obviously, I think it comes down to the ideal Jedi kind of doesn't exist because that would be a boring story, especially if they're a main character. I think maybe Qui-Gon comes close because I don't think Qui-Gon's the main character of Phantom Menace, as much as I know some people would argue. I mean, I think it's Padme.
Yeah.
I have problems with how that's executed, but I think it's Padme. And I think Qui-Gon as sort of the wise Jedi mentor character to really facilitate Anakin and Obi-Wan's growth.
Mm-hmm.
I'd allowed to probably play more of that role because that can be that role.
Well, again,
Yeah.
sorry to say, he's the ideal in absence, right? That's the point. That's why George Lucas killed him off. Is here's your ideal. Too bad. You have to. I mean, here's the drama. Let the drama play out.
Oh, of course.
And the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker play out.
No, I 100% agree with that, and I think that's why. Although Ahsoka, I think, comes a good second place, and for me at least, because she's getting all more to see. Something about the ancient gods picked her for something. I don't know what, but it's something.
Hopefully, Dave Filoni tells us sometime. Whatever Morai's doing up there. Yeah. One thing I want to say about that though is the only place where Jedi are actually fully the ideal. So I'm going to go here again. The Force Ghosts. That they've passed through death into new life. They're one with the Force and free to take up their personality when the living actually need them to. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know if we haven't seen much of Qui-Gon. We've only seen a second of Qui-Gon Force Ghost. Obi-Wan all through the original trilogy, even when he's wrong, maybe, but he's sitting on a log actually helping Yoda and helping all of us understand what was happening during the prequel trilogy. And that's the story we got. It's 6 films that George Lucas gave us, and then 3 more. And in the second of those 3 more, Yoda is finally able to be the ideal, in part because he's able to say the greatest teacher failure is, in part because, I mean, he knows Rey has the books. Luke needs the detachment. Luke needs to let go and see the safety valve of Jedi tradition. For him, it's too much of a safety valve. For Rey, it's a foundation. It's the inspiration to go further. For Luke, it's the safety valve that needs to be turned off. And so Yoda summons the lightning and destroys the tree. That's my favorite scene in The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah, great.
And great. So, yeah, that vision. I spoke at the beginning of this conversation about the vision, the ability to pierce through the dark side, to see the light, to see the Force. The Christian tradition always says that, or has traditionally believed that, we die and then we're raised again. We live having an eternal life, that we see God, and by seeing God, we see all of reality as it truly is, including ourselves, as we ought to be. We become who we are meant to be. And so, yeah, I mean, this drawing on different traditions, not just Christian traditions, but the instances of Force Ghosts, they cannot be the main character. Force Ghosts can never be the main character. Yeah. The point of any good story, again, is the struggle within and the struggle without. But as supporters, kind of like we talk about how Palpatine is not really character. Force Ghosts, and I mean, Palpatine represents the unlight. He's not this darkness that embodied. He's the unlight. Force Ghosts are there to help these characters discern what the light is. And so it's no accident that Qui-Gon becomes the first Force Ghost, and how long reintroduces this idea to the galaxy, introduces the idea into the Star Wars chronology, the film's chronology, because he came the closest to embodying the ideals. So he can now, it's just a quick step into what Christians call sainthood.
I almost challenged you for a second when it came to Obi-Wan, but I was rethinking that moment in the log. He's like, actually, Obi-Wan never says you gotta kill Darth Vader. He just says you gotta face him again. So
yeah. I think Yoda in that moment does think he's got to kill him.
Well, Yoda's still alive,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
he's not a Force ghost just yet. He
Yeah.
becomes one, but he's
Yeah.
still alive. But Obi-Wan, who is a Force ghost, is like, no, you just gotta face him. You don't gotta really
Yeah.
kill him. We didn't say kill, we said face.
And face knowing what's going to happen, knowing
Right.
that he's going to throw away his saber and help Anakin return.
Right. At
Mhm.
least that's how I read it. Although Luke does say I can't kill my own father. No, we won't go. Well, the Emperor has already won.
Yeah,
So
I'll have to find a way to square the circle that one.
um,
I'm sure there was a
like
square the circle there.
we was still being a little biased here. Although he seemed pretty chummy with Anakin when they're all Force ghosts left. That dude.
Anakin becomes a Force ghost at the end. That's true.
Yeah, there. I still have. I'm gonna be honest. I've always had a problem with that kind of inherently.
That's fair.
Because it's sort of like he dies, and then it's like, I mean, I know there's a lore thing, but it's like just in the movies, like Anakin's never like, the space fashion thing wasn't a good idea. Maybe we should try democracy next time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
he never rejects that. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
One of those.
But
weird
maybe
things.
Chosen One brings balance to the Force.
Mm.
I know you don't.
I know. It's always been a weird thing. I hope
Yeah.
something new does something different with it in terms of like
Yeah.
that in which if we ever see Force Ghost Anakin again to really kind of cement it.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
enough.
hey, Adam Christopher did a good job complicating that.
Yeah, it's true. So
Yeah.
who knows? I hope we see Hayden in something else.
Mhm.
But we'll start wrapping things up. But
Okay.
I want to just do like two more things. I just want to give
Go
shout
for it.
outs
Oh yeah.
to Chosen Nightwolf. He says, I'm really looking forward to the Acolyte Bad Batch Season 2 and Ahsoka. Yeah. And then he said earlier, Season 1 of Andor started out slow, but really built the tensions throughout. Agreed. And our buddy Hannah, so excited for this. I think we were talking about Jedi Fallen Order.
Survivor. Yeah.
So Survivor. I'm going to keep screwing up names.
That's okay.
There.
We know what you're talking about.
But yeah, this was a good conversation on what makes the ideal Jedi, and the ideal Jedi can probably never be a main character because that's just boring storytelling.
That is true. That is true. All right. Well, I think that's a good time to wrap things up. Again, Joel, thanks for leading that conversation, and all your comments on the newsy items before that. Thanks for everyone joining in the comments. Great conversations in the comments. No thanks to the spam bots, but thanks to the actual real human beings commenting and giving their thoughts. If you like what you heard, have some thoughts to add, feel free to put them in the comments below. Those will always be there. Please do give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the Star Wars Underworld channel if you haven't done so already. Switch to our plugs. Again, if you like what you saw, also let us know at Iron Canon Pod at Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where on the internet can they find you?
You can find me at JID2021, again, at JID2021 on Twitter, where I will post opinions, ideas, and all sorts of things. You can also follow us at the Ion Cannon Pod, where I might post polls depending on if we do this new idea for topic. So I am very excited. So go vote if you do it.
Yeah, I'll mention what the topic is likely is in a second, but and Joel, you got some good long Twitter threads that are kind of like article posts, but on Twitter, just pretty great ideas, pretty great thoughts in true Ion Cannon fashion. The deep dive on Twitter, it requires multiple tweets, just how the medium works, but it works. There we go. You can find me on Twitter at NEUG45. Kind of a lot about the World Cup and different things going on, but yes, definitely still got my Star Wars and Star Trek and other things commenting there on Instagram at MEUG1138. I throw some stories up there. But on Twitter and Instagram at Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. You can also, of course, follow the flagship, the network, the flagship podcast at the SWU. Again, to all our full episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I will again post this right after this, and Tractor Beam on Friday. Okay, next week we are, as mentioned, likely going to talk about the Galactic Republic, different questions, concerns, ideas that spring up from that. Joel, go
Here's a
for it.
question for you all here, and I might even do a Twitter post on that. And Matthew, let's think about this question. It might seem like a simple answer at first, but maybe your political science brain might make you think otherwise. And the question is this: is the Galactic Republic a democracy?
Probably not. We'll definitely dive into that next week. That's a great question to do. But for now, Joel, let's blow this thing and head home.